World Teacher Day today, and this is another day we get to celebrate the amazing teachers at DCG and in our lives. And I think back to one teacher in particular, Mr. Scott Carlson, my high school social studies teacher, just a guy who high expectations of me, great relationship builder, and somebody that still checks in with me today is just someone I'll always remember having a huge influence on my life. Thank you, teachers, for everything you do for our kids.
Mrs. Gielen was a teacher that inspired me. She was my kindergarten teacher, and she was just so warm and welcoming. And then as a high schooler, I was in her classroom as a school-to-work student, and I learned so much from her.
A teacher that inspired me was my high school physical education teacher, Mr. Christensen. The reason that he inspired me was he brought energy every day, had great relationships with his students, and he also asked a lot out of his students.
A teacher that inspired me was actually my mom when I was in high school, because I was able to see all of the work she did behind the scenes and in the classroom, and she took a lot of dedication and grit and made relationships, and I saw that and said, hey, I want to be just like my mom and do the same thing with my kids.
Definitely Kathy Morrow. She is just a magnificent teacher, and I strive every day to be just like her.
A teacher that has made an impact on my life is Lori Bing. She was my high school AP Bio and Anatomy and Physiology teacher at Ankeny High School when I went to school there. Kind of lost touch with her after a couple years graduating high school, got back in touch, and she wrote me a letter of rec to get into my Master's of Education program, and then I ended up teaching with her at Ankeny High School for a couple years.
A teacher that inspired me was actually Dr. Bloom, because he just made learning so relevant to everybody, and he just genuinely cared about all of his students.
My fourth grade teacher, Mr. McGraw, inspired me to love poetry, love reading, and become a teacher for literacy. And in fact, I can still recite a couple of the poems that he taught me.
The teacher who inspired me is Mrs. Axmere, and she was my kindergarten teacher. She was always just so kind and fun, and I show my class every year the picture of her, and what an inspiration she was.
My third grade teacher was Mrs. Minger at South Prairie School, and she inspired me to be a teacher just because she would always invite me back into her classroom, and I got to help her, and she just made a great relationship with me and truly cared about me.
Mrs. Davidson inspired me because she was just a great teacher and a great leader, and I loved being in her classroom every day, and I just learned so much from her, and it just made me want to be a teacher.